I'm playing every game on Game Pass. Today we have Terminull Brigade. I can't lie, I can only really describe this as Overwatch with a PVE mode. Set in a sci-fi world called the Nullverse, Terminull Brigade is a third-person roguelike hero shooter where you play as one of several heroes, each with their own unique weapons, abilities, and playstyles going through a typical PVE gameplay loop. Playing solo or co-op, you load into a level, defeat groups of enemies, gather items, and upgrade your attributes using code, and essentially, that's just what the game is. With an average rating of 6 out of 10 on Steam, and a user score of 7.6 on Metacritic, it's safe to say that the game hasn't been received as well as it could be, and I do sort of understand why. Straight away, it does what most games do and puts you into its tutorial, which is normal, but the problem was it didn't tell you what your abilities were, it just told you what buttons to press to activate them. And after said tutorial, the game doesn't give you any form of aid whatsoever. You pick one of two rogue tiers you want to start with, the other being locked behind a login reward scheme, then loads you into a Fortnite style menu straight after and doesn't tell you what anything means, which can be overwhelming at times, especially with like battle passes and events, stuff like that, for a game that I've never played before. Once I got past the menu and figured everything out, I found the gameplay loop to be quite repetitive. All I was really doing was going to an area, clearing said area, going to the next area, and repeating. At first I did find this to be quite entertaining, and the game did feel smooth, but the levels were just too short in my opinion, leading me to feel like I was in the menus dealing with upgrades and items, more than actually playing the game. Which was a shame, because some of the worlds and levels actually looked really good graphical wise. You just didn't get to see much of it. The combat didn't really evolve either, apart from the occasional passive effects like the lightning fast, which actually did feel satisfying to pull off, as it would annihilate enemies in a couple seconds. But again, it would just lead to the area cleared text coming quicker than it should have done. One thing I did like was that it was clear that each hero had a specific playstyle. Colonel, who I chose at the beginning, and is clearly just a multiverse variant of Soldier 76, was quite easy to use. It was clear that his playstyle was ranged and gung-ho. While Blade, who I ended up unlocking through story progression, was a melee-centric character that allowed you to swiftly cut through hordes of enemies. The unfortunate thing, however, is that half of these heroes are actually locked behind a paywall, so unless you're willing to open your wallet, there are only 4 accessible heroes to play as. Which is a shame, as for a hero shooter, you would expect to be able to play more. But all gameplay critiques aside, graphically and performance-wise, the game runs extremely well. Not once did I encounter any bugs, glitches, or performance drops. Well, apart from the lack of translation from certain item pickups to English. Normally, the cartoonish modern anime art style doesn't really impress me too much, but the art style really does suit the sci-fi element that the game is going for, especially with some of the boss and enemy designs. Like this robot dragon, for example, a boss you fight later on in the game. The concept isn't new, but it genuinely feels like an actual dragon, but with that man-made feel, something which a lot of people have failed to do in the past, in my opinion. However, with the graphics looking this good and a lot happening on your screen, you would genuinely expect some performance drops, but there just isn't any. Not in my time of playing anyway, which did impress me, as nowadays there's always a catch with good graphics when it comes to performance. There was a catch, however, with the actual feel of the areas themselves. While they looked good and fit the sci-fi theme well, it just felt bog standard sci-fi. It looked too put together, if that makes sense, and just had all sense of life removed, to the point where you were just walking around shooting enemies and not really taking anything in. So when it all came towards the end of the timer, I asked myself if I wanted to keep playing, and my brain responded with, I don't know.
Huh?
I didn't know, because I did genuinely find it satisfying to go through hordes of enemies, but there just didn't feel like there was any reward to it. Every item had similar stats, Each level would just make you stronger than you would need to be, to the point where I didn't even realise it was a roguelike until doing some research on the game afterwards, because I just didn't die at all playing. I don't even think I lost any of my shields. I did use the full hour, and admittedly a bit more, but I just wanted to see if the game would change at all, which it didn't. Which ultimately did let me down, as the setup was there, but the execution wasn't. Now, when comparing this game to the value of Game Pass, I wanted to measure it using three things. Whether or not I found it a good use of an hour, would I play it if I had to pay for it, and if it justifies its place on the service over a similar game. While I did find the game to have a repetitive and average nature, I think I would say this is an alright use of an hour, but not much more, to be honest. Would I keep playing it? Probably not, but if you had an hour to kill, and you already have the game installed, it is satisfying every now and again. If I had to pay for the game, I don't think I would have spent my money, but even if you don't have Game Pass, you don't have to, because the game itself is actually free. Yeah, it's on Game Pass, but it's free. So there must be some benefit to downloading it from Game Pass, right? Wrong. There is no benefit. Yeah, so quick follow-up. After recording, turns out I was misinformed. There is actually benefits to downloading through Game Pass. But it just mainly includes skins, loot boxes, all that stuff. Whoops. Which answers my third question about whether or not its place on the service is justified. In my opinion, there are similar games which would hold a better place, like Gunfire Reborn or Returnal on PC Game Pass. Games you actually have to pay for, as you aren't getting any value at all from Terminull Brigade being on Game Pass, because it's just free in general. Which brings me to my own personal verdict on the game. If we take away Game Pass and talk about the game itself, I think that the game is alright. Would I play it again? Probably not. But I do think that it has a certain demographic that would enjoy the game. Unfortunately, I'm just not part of that demographic. Ratings wise, I'm going to agree with the average Steam rating and give Terminull Brigade a 6 out of 10. The game is well made, but it just feels lifeless and repetitive in my opinion, so it's not for me. And I can't justify having a free-to-play game be part of a paid service. It's just like paying for BBC iPlayer or YouTube. So that's been my review and opinions on Terminull Brigade. If you've disagreed with anything I've said, or something I said has been incorrect, you're more than welcome to correct me. But for now, I'll see you in the next one.